We usually think of balloons as harmless, fun little symbols of celebration, right? But what happens when a joyous PR spectacle scales that celebration up to a level that literally alters the environment of an entire city? Well, in today's Explainer, we're going to unpack a highly coordinated event that started with cheers, aimed for the history books, and ended up causing absolute paralyzing chaos.
Seriously? What actually happens when a city releases 1.5 million balloons all at once? I mean, it sounds like a child's wildest imagination, like a colorful cartoon brought to life. But this wasn't a cartoon. This was a massive, real world logistical operation driven by a community that just wanted to do something spectacular. Yet, when you unleash that kind of volume into the open air, you're no longer just putting on a show. You are quite literally tempting fate. And the result was absolute apocalyptic gridlock. Just picture emergency vehicles down in the streets. Fire engines, police cruisers, ambulances, completely immobilized in a slick, torrential sea of latex. The city's essential lifelines were totally severed because the infrastructure was suffocated by what was meant to be a simple party favor.
So, how exactly did a celebration turn into a disaster of this magnitude? To make sense of the chaos, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. After all, nobody sets out to paralyze a major metropolis. So where did this colossal miscalculation actually begin?
Imagine the scene during the setup. There was this incredibly optimistic, awe-struck atmosphere. A massive crowd had gathered around an entire city block, and spanning right above them was a giant structural net holding back an ocean of brightly colored balloons. People were waving flags, and you could feel the sheer excitement vibrating through the crowd. It was a monumental community effort, bringing everyone together with one shared goal: break a world record and create a breathtaking visual spectacle that the whole world would admire.
1.5 million. 1,500,000 balloons. It is a staggering volume to even try to wrap your head around. And that number, that's really the core of this story, because it highlights both the incredible ambition of the organizers and, ultimately, the sheer hubris of the whole project. When you scale an action to this degree, the variables and the risks multiply exponentially. 1.5 million of anything released into the environment is no longer just a stunt. It is a massive, uncontrollable ecological injection.
The plan to pull this off seemed pretty straightforward. Step 1, inflate all those balloons with helium using a literal army of volunteers. Step 2, trapped them under that massive city block-sized net. And step 3, release them all simultaneously into the sky. It sounds simple and elegant on paper, right? And honestly, to their credit, the organizers flawlessly executed the inflation and the trapping. They created this bubbling, colorful canopy over the city. Everything was perfectly in place for that triumphant final step.
Now, the expected outcome was based on very simple physics. Helium is lighter than air, so the balloons would naturally float upward, safely drifting higher and higher until they harmlessly burst and scattered. But nature had a completely different agenda. A severe, totally unpredicted cold front suddenly moved in. And here's the thing, when helium hits freezing air, it compresses and loses its lift. So the weather effectively created a completely unpredictable meteorological nightmare that shattered all their best-laid plans. The moment that net was pulled, the balloons surged upward in a majestic tower of color. But that victory, it was incredibly short-lived. The sky literally fell. That cold front hit the balloon cloud like a brick wall. Instead of dispersing high up into the stratosphere, that massive, colorful mass cooled, condensed, and began to plummet. Just imagine 1.5 million physical objects abruptly losing their buoyancy, changing direction, and frantically raining back down onto the streets, the highways, and the waterways of a bustling metropolitan area. Out on the water, the consequences were absolutely tragic. Picture being out there on a swaying boat with a Coast Guard. It's an active, dramatic maritime emergency. You've got this churning ocean motion beneath you, a soft morning fog drifting across the water, and a cold, biting wind whipping at the officers' jackets and hair. They were out there desperately searching for individuals from a capsized boat. But in the middle of this highly tense atmosphere, they were suddenly met with a terrifying obstacle. Thousands upon thousands of colorful balloons began landing right on the water's surface, creating a deadly, bobbing minefield that completely camouflaged everything around them. Let's break down how fast this all unraveled. Within just 1 hour of the release, the skies literally darkened as this massive swarm of balloons fell back over the city, physically blocking out the sun.
By hour 2, the situation escalated from a crazy public nuisance to a critical safety hazard. A local airport was forced to completely shut down its runways because they were just blanketed in slippery latex debris. And then, at the 3-hour mark, the absolute worst-case scenario happened. The Coast Guard, still searching frantically on the water, found it completely impossible to spot an orange life vest amidst a vast, undulating sea of floating orange balloons. The sheer physical presence of the balloons systematically dismantled the city's ability to function and to save lives. First, you had city streets paralyzed, not just by the physical debris, but by the overwhelming visual distraction that literally blocked emergency responders from doing their jobs. Second, crucial transportation hubs like the airport runways had to be closed to prevent catastrophic accidents. And finally, search and rescue operations were quite literally blinded by the matching balloon colors. It's just a textbook example of how one localized, poorly planned spectacle can cascade into a widespread, multi-system collapse. Which brings us to a really crucial, lingering question. When exactly does our desire for massive spectacle outweigh our responsibility to public safety and the environment? This event wasn't born out of malice. It was born out of a desire to create joy, to bring people together, and to break records. Yet it serves as a powerful, permanent reminder that our actions, especially at this kind of scale, have profound, uncontrollable impacts on the world around us. It forces us to take a step back and ask ourselves where we draw the line between a brilliant community idea and a catastrophic oversight. Thank you so much for joining me to explore this fascinating slice of history today. I'll leave you to deeply consider that question